So I want to go ahead and say one of mine from my list, sticking on the theme, the Batman. Came out this year. Has a rating on IMDb of 7.9 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 85 for the critics and an 87 for the audience. So pretty well received on both aspects, which doesn't really seem to happen. Um,
So why, personally to you, is this movie in your top five?
I really enjoy when films are grounded in reality, and they're like when I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, that could be possible, like I could see that actually happening. And the scene that really pops out in my head of like, oh yeah, I can see that. So when he is in the police station and he's talking to Gordon, and then he's like, "You gotta go, punch me," kind of thing. He hits him and then runs out, and then he gets to the top of the building, and you can see like the fear on Batman's face of like, "Oh shoot, I gotta jump off this building." These policemen are coming after me, and you can tell like it was like one of his first times, if not his first time ever trying this. And he jumps out and he had like the actual wingsuit that skydivers actually use, which I thought was pretty cool. I think it'd be cool if they merge that into his cape for the second movie, if they do the second movie or whatever. But it was cool to see him fly that with fear and then also not stick the landing. I thought that was a really cool aspect of it. But I really like it when it's like, yeah, that's possible. All the physics seem to line up, in the moment. I mean, sure, if we watch it back and whatnot, you can see things and you're like, ah. But like that first initial feeling, the whole time I was watching, I was invested in the detective side of the story rather than just the movie going like big blows, big explosions, CGI this, CGI that, which is cool, but this one kind of captured my like what's gonna happen attention. You
Yeah.
know, I really liked the dark aspect of it. I liked the cinematography a lot. I liked the I think he used like an old 35 millimeter lens and stuff, and they had really cool bokeh and all this stuff, which is just like when the background and the foreground's like really blurry, and the subject's in focus and stuff. And it was like when the in the very beginning that tool that falls, and it
Yeah.
falls into place, and then later they have that
Carpet
same
tool.
yeah they have that same camera angle where that tool was, and then it's like in focus. Batman walks up to it and is like, "Oh, there's something there."
So while we're talking about cinematography, I want to mention the director of this movie is Matt Reeves, and the cinematographer is Greg Fraser. Both hugely talented at what they do, um, and just making more and more amazing content. I mean, Greg Fraser is working on Dune. Matt Reeves has another project coming up. I don't know the title off the top of my head, but they are going to just continue to shoot up from here because of how successful that movie was.
Yeah.
I can pull the cord on saying that this movie is also in my top five. Um, so, I mean, I've loved Batman since I was a little kid, and I've always loved the detective aspect of Batman too. And I wanted them to make a movie where Batman chases a serial killer. And I had in my mind when this movie was announced, Victor Zsasz, who is in the comics a serial killer. And they went with the Riddler, and I was hoping they would still do this angle. And I really think that they pulled it off really well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Paul Dano is a really incredible actor. He's really I really like him in Prisoners, and I
Yeah.
think he does a really good job in this movie as the Riddler. They they just did the detail because I love the movie Seven, and I love David Fincher movies like this dark,
We just watched this not
rainy.
that long
Yeah,
ago. Yeah.
that's like one of my top movies, top 20 for sure. And I really like that dark, rainy detective story, and they did that in a Batman film. So they just married two things that
Yeah.
I love, and they did it so beautifully. I mean, the rainy, dark atmosphere, like so many shots of this movie are in the dark, in the rain,
Yeah.
and you just have that feeling like it being in the rain
I
in the
feel like that
house.
was a complaint of some people is that the movie was like so dark, like you could not really see what was going on. I love that aspect of it, because again, it makes it feel more grounded. And like he's working at night and stuff, and if you're paying attention, you see the things that the director wants you to see. Like they shot it that way for a purpose.
I would find it so hard to argue that that movie isn't like beautifully shot.
Yeah.
Like saying it's too dark is like uh, if that's an insult to the lighting and the cinematography of the movie, I just don't understand it because the movie is so visually pleasing and visually stimulating.
Yeah.
I can think of so many shots off the top of my head where I was like, that's neat that they did that, or just completely entranced because of
Also, throughout the entire movie, I was falling more and more in love with his suit. I think it's the best live action Batman suit that we've seen, in my opinion. Um, I just thought it looked so cool. It looked like it was handmade. It looked like it had a lot of practical military implements put into it. Um, and then I also liked at the end that end fight where he's again made to seem like he's human. Like he's getting the crap beat out of him, and then he takes that shot of adrenaline and then just
yeah,
loses it,
yeah,
and then like he's so hyped up that he just keeps bam, 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 like I love that he needed to do that and that he just wasn't like brushing off these hits and that shotgun blast like it was nothing. I like that they made him seem like he's still a human. Um,
there's an emotionality to that too. I mean, the screaming and he's shouting at other points in the movie when he's fighting. If somebody's punching you in the face, realistically, you're gonna be angry. Like we don't like we
right.
see so many like I don't want to say cheesy, but we see so many action scenes where they're just shaking off stabs and bullet wounds and like people are gonna react to that. That the acting while you fight is part of the acting, it's not just the dialogue. So like the
Yeah.
physical acting, I think the action sequences are really well done in that movie.
Yeah. I thought that was great.
I wanted to talk about the score in this movie. So I'm gonna reference back The Dark Knight. So you're not coming directly off of The Dark Knight because there's obviously a whole other series of appearances for Batman, but The Dark Knight is the movie that I will immediately compare everything to, like you talked about with the
Yeah.
Joker.
I
So
mean,
when
Ben Affleck, the other Batman that you were talking about, like
yeah,
he hasn't had his own movie yet either.
so that's a big factor
You know,
too. I mean, he's got he has a specific score in his movie, but it's
it's
different.
yeah,
So in my head, I'm comparing everything to The Dark Knight, one of
yeah,
my favorite movies of all time. So which is unfair, admittedly unfair, but I can't help it. So when this movie comes out, um, you're going to compare the score, which Hans Zimmer wrote the a masterpiece of a score when he wrote the Batman score for The Dark Knight.
definitely. I remember as I don't know how old I was, 13 or whatever, and I was making like this little movie actually with my sisters, and I was filming it on my iPod 4, and it was like this little action movie or whatnot. Kind of based off the movie Click, where I had a remote and I could like pause things and rewind things or whatever.
That's awesome.
And I used the music from The Dark Knight in that.
Yeah, that's how early
It
on it was like captured you.
was like so it had this epic music and probably this very, 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 very subpar acting,
How many
screenwriting.
berries was that? It's like
Very.
three berries.
And obviously it was shot on a little iPhone, so the music definitely surpassed
This is not fitting.
everything else.
Hans was like, okay,
I really
I
wish
see
I
you.
could. I really wish I could find that because I don't think I have it anymore anywhere. But
But
man, but anyways, I really like the score on The Dark Knight as well.
so one thing that they did when, and I believe this started with Batman Begins, was they had James Newton Howard, another legendary composer, come on board, and he wrote the score for Bruce Wayne, and Hans Zimmer wrote the scores for Batman. And so you have these two, the dichotomy of these two personalities, with the music being written by two totally different people. So it has the feeling of being from different worlds, which
Yeah,
I think was really, really brilliant, really genius.
yeah.
And then cut to all this time down the line, now we're watching the Batman, and you're like, wow, they masterfully created
14
this
years
beautiful
later.
score 14 years ago. Is something that's in my head from when I'm 9 years old, playing on. I mean, I'm literally even into adulthood, going into job interviews, I'm watching the end scene of The Dark Knight with the Gary Oldman speech as Commissioner Gordon saying he's the Dark Knight, and then Hans score pops in like, dun, 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 and
And you're just right in the car, like, let's go.
way too. They're like, we don't need that energy in this job interview, sir. I mean, please, why are you bench pressing? But the but that is
You come into the job interview through the ceiling, just
I'm repelling
superhero
it
landed on
in a bat suit. But that's how much I love that the score and the like emotionality I have connected to it. and Michael Giacchino comes in and does the score for the Batman, like you said, 14 years later, and somehow it feels like he rivaled that magic that they struck
I
before. It was really good.
So I based this list again off of the feeling that I had when I first watched it, and I think that's why The Dark Knight isn't on this list. But for this one, we went and watched it, came home, I was all pumped in the car driving back, you know, because it was a 45-minute drive. And then I got home and I remember I first told Brooke, my wife, I was like, she's like, how was the movie? And I was like, it was all right. Like I was digesting it, you
Yeah.
know, like I didn't know how to articulate
You
it
don't
yet.
want to say too soon because you
Yeah,
don't want to seem like a
exactly.
poser
I
later.
wanted it to marinate, but as soon as I got home, I put on Batman's song from that movie and just listened to it around the house as
Oh,
I was getting ready for bed, and I was like, that song is so awesome. And then the next day when I would go and work out, I was like humming that song in my head as I was getting warming up for my workout and stuff. It's like, ah,
it feels
it
like it
just hits.
swells up. It feels like it
Yeah,
plays from like inside you
yeah,
outward. Like
it's
it's
great.
so so good. Yeah, it's incredible. And you really feel just it's I would say the feeling encapsulated by that before we started recording, we were talking about what what the music in a movie, how it can encapsulate a feeling. And
This one
I
definitely
feel like
does.
that encapsulate I feel like it sounds ominous. Like it just
Yeah,
sounds foreboding
yeah,
and like
which is definitely his
yeah,
kind
right?
of character,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning of the movie, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, the one thing I want to talk about this movie is I have a critique for it because I am a negative person and I have to say bad things about things. Um,
what you
but
got?
I think a very important thing that I think could have made this movie a lot better, and I'm just, coming from a viewer's perspective, I don't think I could have made a better movie, but I think they could have ended it probably 15, I'd say 10 to 20 minutes earlier. I think if they ended that film, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it, if they ended that film on the rooftop scene where he's holding the kid's hand and the kid grips his hand and the helicopter pulls him up and he lets go, I think ending the movie there would have been beautiful. Not only is it an incredible shot, but it's the perfect end cap for this man's journey. You watched him in the beginning come as a symbol of fear. In the beginning, he protects this guy in the subway and walks up to him, but the innocent person he's protecting is afraid of him.
Yeah,
He's scared of his, I mean, someone who would otherwise be his hero. And because he's this ominous, foreboding figure, this menacing creature of the night. And we see him come full circle to where a child isn't afraid of him, and a child holds onto his hand as a symbol of hope. And the child looks up to him and sees through that child's eyes a symbol of hope and a person who has taken that journey from beginning to end. I think that is the perfect end cap for the movie that perfectly encapsulates his character journey, his arc, and what he's been through. And he's going to go on to be that person moving forward. But instead, we get an extra 15 minutes with. Uh, they kind of push a Joker cameo on us, and then we have a scene in the cemetery with him and Catwoman, which I guess if they ended it earlier, maybe it seems like they're not
wrapping
really
up there.
wrapping up their relationship,
Yeah,
the arc of their relationship. But I just
I
wish
think
they
the
had
Joker
found a
scene
way.
wasn't necessary. You
Yeah,
know, I think we could be teased for that without even having it in
yeah,
the movie. You know, because like Joker is such a big part of the Batman. Like we're already being teased with it not being in the movie
yeah,
as it is. You know, but as a director myself on some projects and someone who films and edits things, projects and whatnot, it's really hard to have all of this footage, you know, and all of this story and to like condense it down into something that you have to fit within your timeline.
yeah,
You know, like we just worked on a project and we had 14 hours worth of footage and I had to bring that down and condense it down into 3 hours of edited footage. And it's really hard to take out certain things because you're like, man, like this is really cool, or and you feel like it's important to the story as the director, but then at the same time, it's like, well, something's got to go, you know.
yeah,
So like, I can see how it's like hard to
yeah.
like you talked about like babies, you know, like all these movies are your babies or whatever. Like, all right, now you have to get rid
Yeah.
of three of them.
Three of your
You have
babies.
to,
This
you know, like
well,
it's kind of like
also
that.
some movies nowadays have as much as 1,000, even 2,000 hours of pure footage that they're going through to
Yeah,
decide what makes the final cut for the movie.
it's
So
insane.
yeah, it's
It's crazy
hard.
how they're able to narrow it all down and find something cohesive that looks, sounds, and feels good. You know. Last part on the Batman, and then we'll move on. We've talked a lot about the Batman so far.
It's the Batman podcast now.
That's right.
You have to change the name.
It had a budget of 185 million, and it made 707.
And also, that means less screenings. They can't fit as many screenings into a day, which means less tickets, less money. So, but moving on to the next movie,